This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, super practical.
I'm not telling people to have a mistress. I'm teaching you, learn the lesson from the people who have a mistress, because there's many business lessons that apply.
Pious.
There's a part in the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I want you either hot or cold. I'm spewing lukewarm churches out. And I think it's a good way to look at your list.
Romantic to his very core.
Once in a while, I'll give my girl a present, like a Snickers bar or something.
And totes tender.
If someone asks you to walk on eggshells, smash the eggshells and let the chips fall wherever they may.
Adored by feminists everywhere.
It takes a strong woman to admit when she's wrong.
Not a judgmental bone in his entire body.
I look at all the free information people give just on Facebook and I go, what a bunch of time hose.
Has a PhD in armchair philosophy.
In the land of dumbasses, the smartass is king.
You'll never meet a more sensitive guy.
If you really care about people, you shame the hell out of them. This is Ben Settle, the bensettle.com podcast. Okay, so I want to talk about a topic of gentrification. Now, I didn't even understand what gentrification meant until recently. All right, so this is I've heard the word and all that. It never really affected me because of where I live, Jonathan. There's no such thing as gentrification on the Oregon coast. It just doesn't happen. You know what it is, right? Like, you understand what gentrification is?
I had to look it up, but yeah.
Like, they take, like, when a city takes a bad part of the city and, like, makes it all new and pretty and sparkly. And
they
like,
put a Starbucks in.
Yeah, they put a Starbucks in or 10 and the prices go up and then everyone basically has to start moving out and new people move in and it's like changes the whole thing. Crime goes away, but then a lot of good people are kind of forced out too, you know? And so it's good for some people, not so good for others. I don't have a dog in the fight, although I can tell you I prefer to hang out in gentrified areas myself. Yeah. The first to admit it. And this occurred to me when I was in New York. So I was in New York and I saw like the famous Hell's Kitchen. Right now, I only know Hell's Kitchen from Daredevil. That's the extent of my culture. Like, that's how cultured I'm not. I knew like that's all I knew. But it's not run down or anything like that. It's like everything's like new now, and it's like gentrified. And Harlem is another example. Like before I went to Harlem, I thought it was like Luke Cage. Right? That's what I thought. I had no idea what Harlem was. I thought it was Luke Cage, and the only thing I knew about Harlem, because I'd never been to New York before, was from the show Different Strokes. Remember Different Strokes?
What you talking about?
They came from Harlem. What you talking about, Willis? They came from Harlem, and then they moved to Park Avenue, and like, you know, the way they describe Harlem, it's like, you know, this rundown area and all this. Well, when I was in Harlem, it was not run down at all. It was actually really nice, and that's gentrification. So it's not Luke Cage anymore. It's not, you know, and so again, there's good and there's bad that comes out of it. You know, the what made it good is gone with what made it bad gone, right? So it's like a whole new thing. It basically looks like any other nice area, basically. Doesn't bother me at all. I prefer it that way personally as a tourist, so it doesn't bother me.
As a privileged white man, yeah.
As a privileged white man with toxic whiteness and blinding toxic whiteness, I might add, I'm okay with it. But I also understand why people would not be okay with it. But it got me thinking about businesses too, and how people should be gentrifying. Some people should be gentrifying their businesses. In other words, there's a lot of people out there, and I feel like I have to do some business stuff, Jonathan, because these last couple episodes were really not about business very much. Like, you know, the Valentine's Day one, really nothing. Yeah. I mean, all the stuff I talked about applies to business, you know. I mean, like, isn't there something better I can be doing? You can apply that to business. Like, let's take a freelance copywriter. You know, they're freaking out because they sent a proposal to a would-be client. They really need the money. They don't know what they're going to do if they don't get this gig, and they're freaking out. And you know, they're checking their email every 2 seconds, and they're checking their texts and everything. And even though they live in 2018. They still think that they don't want anyone else calling them in case they get a busy signal. You know, and they're worried about it. They could just ask themselves, isn't there something better I can be doing? And then their brain would say, well, yeah, you could actually be working on getting another client. So you don't have to rely on this one, or building your own product or something. That's my whole point. Or telling people no when they need to be told no, or disagreeing with somebody when they need to be disagreed with. You know, understanding these types of things. It's always your fault. Applies to business as much as anything else. Otherwise, you're never going to grow and not make the same mistakes. So my whole point is this. We didn't talk a lot about business the last couple of weeks, but this time I wanted to get more business-y. And so I'm going to talk about gentrifying your business. And people who there's a lot of people who need to gentrify their business. Jonathan, tons of people do.
Yeah.
They their whole business is like some stupid $7 ebook, and they sell it in the Warrior Forum or wherever, or Facebook groups or whatever. They're not even mailing their list, right? They have cheap customers. They have customers that do nothing but complain about price and then refund right away. Or even worse, they report you, for whatever reason. They blame all their problems. They download all their insecurities onto you because of what you sold them, apparently ruined their life and all this stuff. Those are the types of people that need to gentrify their business. They need to have a higher quality business. They have to have higher quality customers. They have to have higher quality everything. And one of the ways you can gentrify your business is not unlike gentrifying an area where you kind of raise all the prices. Okay. So whatever you sell, I don't care if it's a product or service, if you want to gentrify your business, if you want a higher quality customer or client, and you're tired of nickel and diming and all these nickel and dime people, then raise your prices. Just raise your prices. I think the worst that happens, you put your prices back. Okay. And I know people don't like doing that, and I understand it. But Dan Kennedy talks about this thing called price elasticity. And basically, you'd be amazed at what people are willing to pay for what. Because it's not the price. If they're buying on price, you're going after the wrong people anyway. There's two types of price shoppers. Jonathan, we did a whole episode about the two types of price shoppers. I don't know if you remember this. This was in the old Ben Settle show. One price shopper is they only buy if it's cheap. They're going to get the boxed wine because it's cheaper than, the bottle of wine or whatever. They're going to get the cheap beer instead of like the higher quality imported stuff. They're going to get Velveeta. What is that cheese? Velveeta, whatever. This crappy cheese versus getting some good stuff. They're gonna go get the Oscar Mayer turkey or whatever, instead of going up to the deli and having it freshly cut and all that. That's what they're going to do. They're going to get the cheap gas that's screwing up their engine because, it's cheaper than the stuff with the Techion, whatever it's called, that you'd get at like Chevron or something. That's how they think. It's all about price. They're going to hire the cheap copywriter, the guy who charges $50 for a sales letter, because they don't want to pay $5,000 for a sales letter. Because why would they? When they can get it cheap. So that's how certain people are. If you want those as your customers, by all means, stay how you're doing it. Okay, just keep your thing how it is. I won't tell you who you should have or not have as a customer. But if you don't want those people as your customers, I highly recommend raising your prices, because raising your price is a form of, I don't know what else I want to put. Like, I want to say status, but it is. Because then you have the other kind of price shopper like me. I will usually pick the expensive thing because I don't have time to research both. And I just assume the expensive thing is much better quality, is going to save me time, and is going to give me a better experience. And so it is. And those are the kind of price shoppers I like to have. I like to have the price shoppers that pay more because they know that paying more is going to be more quality. And I know there are circumstances where that's not the case. But I'm just saying, if you market yourself right and you do right by your list, that's not going to be an issue for you. But those are the ones I want. And by raising your prices, you're going to get people who actually judge you based on having a higher price. Like, they're actually going to choose you over the cheap. How many people, you always hear the analogy you usually hear is doctors, right? Let's say you have brain cancer. Are you going to go to, your regular doctor and have them deal with it just because they're cheaper than going to a brain surgeon? It doesn't make any sense. So that's what I'm saying. Raise your price, specialize in something, and if you have to justify raising your prices, but raise your prices. It's one of the easiest things you can do. You can do it instantly. You could do it right now. You could actually pause this podcast, go into your website, raise your price, tell your email list, or even better, go tell your email list that you're going to raise your price, and today's the last day you can get at this price, and get some sales coming in, and then raise your prices. And then you probably won't get sales for a little bit, but then when new people start coming on your list and all that, and you market, if you email the way I teach, it won't matter anyway. They'll still buy even at a more expensive price. You'll see what I'm talking about. You will see the wisdom of what I'm saying. Very few people understand that it's not, even people you think buy on price don't necessarily buy on price. And that's a whole other podcast we did, if I remember correctly. People don't buy it because of price. They buy it because of comfort, quality, and convenience.
Yeah.
And
we were eating pizza out of the trash that day.
Yeah. Would you rather, it's cheaper to actually make your own pizza by getting the ingredients than it is to just order one. It's like infinitely more expensive to order a pizza than to go grow your own wheat, milk your own cow, all this other stuff. It's way cheaper, but it's not convenient. It's way cheaper to sit on lawn chairs in your living room, but it's not comfortable. So you get a recliner or a couch or something. These are just how it is. It'd be a lot cheaper to go drive some cheap 1985 Yugo around, but it's probably not going to be the safest thing to drive, and it's not going to be a good experience for you driving. Probably get made fun of for one thing by a lot of people, but it's not, but I'm saying it's not really the price that people are buying on. But there are people who do just buy on price. I mean, unfortunately, there are people like that. And most people who compete on price, that's who they're getting. So I say raise your prices, see what happens, if you want to gentrify your business.
Yeah, man.
Another way to gentrify your business, Jonathan, is to have higher standards on your opt-in page. And, I've been doing this for a long time, for at least the last 6 years or so. I make it harder to opt in. I don't make it easier to opt in. They got to check a box saying they acknowledge I'm going to send them daily emails, which, by the way, Google AdWords loves and all that because it's so transparent. But it also, why would I want freebie seekers on my list? I want people who are afraid of sales pitches to not opt in. I have no problem with them not opting in, even if I'm paying for the traffic, because that means I'm generating the wrong kind of traffic if that's an issue. And by having a higher opt-in standards for your opt-ins, you're just going to have a better person on your list. You may not have as many people in your list. I don't have the biggest list in the world. I'm always trying to get it down, actually. I want the people off who are not buyers. And there's a lot of reasons to do this besides just the obvious, too. You'll have better email deliverability usually because people are actually engaging with your emails because they're a higher quality prospect who wants what you have or they're interested in the subject you're talking about. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But having higher opt-in standards is very important. If you want to gentrify your business, and again, if you want to have just freebie seekers and people who are not really serious and tire kickers, and people are going to complain about price or complain that you're emailing too much or whatever, they'll complain about this, that, or the other. By all means, keep your opt-in standards real low and brag about your 80% opt-in rate. I brag about having under 20% opt-in rate, Jonathan, which completely throws people for a loop. They're like, well, that sucks. I'm like, well, my profitability is probably way higher than most of these other people's. I mean, I would have to compare them, but I'm just saying I have no complaints in my sales department. And a lot of it starts at the opt-in. Another way to gentrify your business, and this is just common sense, is to sell high quality products. Most people just wing it. They put this crap out there. They wonder why they're getting crappy customers. Well, just sell high quality products. Quit selling crap from ClickBank if that's what you're doing. I mean, I'm not saying there's not good stuff on ClickBank. There is, but compared to people creating your own product and you can put as much quality in it as you want, it's just night and day difference. And then finally, Jonathan, and I don't know, this is going to be a nice short one. I like this. I should do this more often. The last way you can gentrify your business that we're going to talk about, there's actually a lot more ways, I just don't want to cover all of them today, is to have a higher standard of customer in the first place. So I always like to tell the story of the beer thief. Jonathan, I don't know if I ever told you the story of the beer thief, but when El Bembo was a teenager in high school, I hung out with some people that weren't always the most ethical people, one of which we would go into the grocery store. I watched him do this several times. He'd go into the grocery store and he had this long receipt with him, from the same store. Walks in, grabs a case of beer, tapes the receipt to the beer and walks out of the store.
Nice.
And he got away with this so many times. I don't think he ever got caught. He literally just walked in, put the receipt on it. Nobody thinks to even ask him because there's a receipt on the case of beer.
You got some mileage out of that receipt, huh?
He got a lot of mileage out of that receipt. But here's the problem. That's the store's fault for letting him in there and not paying attention and not having a higher standard quality of customer. Who do they let in? I mean, you have to ask yourself, who do you let into your store? Are you letting people like that into your store? Are you letting them on your list? Are you letting them buy from you? Known people who are known for this kind of stuff to be known refunders and known complainers and known pirates, sharing your stuff with other people. I mean, if you want to gentrify your business, you have to keep them away. And the best way to keep them away is to constantly mock them and let them know that you know who they are and that you have no problem getting rid of them and that you don't need their sale because you're not needy. Most marketers are very needy and they'll take money from whoever they can get it from. I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think you should demand a higher quality standard from your customer, not unlike the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. You ever see that? You've seen that episode, right?
Oh, yeah.
Jonathan?
No
the
soup for you.
He's like, no soup for you. He goes, I expect excellence from my he goes, I expect excellence from my soup and myself. How can I expect anything less from my customers? And I think that is a great way of running a business. And I also think that is a very fitting way to end this episode of the bensettle.com podcast. I don't know what we'll talk about next week, Jonathan, but I'm sure it'll be, I'm not sure about anything anymore. I don't know if it'll be fun or not, but hopefully it will be for you and me and the two listeners we have left after the Valentine's Day podcast. But that's it. That's all I got.
So I'm gonna jump in here before we exit this episode, and I'm gonna add one thing to what you said there. If you guys really want to gentrify your business, you have to spend more money on yourself. You have to elevate your game. So I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to me was your newsletter being so expensive to me at the time and me leveling up my game to be able to afford that. So if you guys haven't subscribed, that was a little unplanned pitch for Ben and the Email Players newsletter.
Wow. And I appreciate that. And I agree, of course. And your thermostat, because your thermostat going back a few weeks, your thermostat was too low. You needed to get higher.
Yes.
You would set your thermostat. You were ready for it at that time. That's why you made it you figured out a way to do it. Had you been comfortable where you were at, you wouldn't have bothered.
Right.
And so that dovetails into something from 4 weeks ago. But anyway, so yeah, we'll talk to you guys next time, and don't steal any more beer.
That's a
what
wrap.
you're doing.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To download yourself a free issue of Ben's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, which is going to show you 24 ways to write emails people eagerly read, click, and buy from, head on over to www.bensettle.com. Off you go. You know it makes sense.
This is the podcastfactory.com.